Hello, Anima-saurus world, and thank you for joining me again for another Anima-saurus interview. Today, I'm very lucky to have in the studio Tess Meyer, who's here to talk very much about what she's done in the pre-production and story writing world of, I guess, magic that she does. So, thanks for joining me, Tess.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for having me.
So I gave a quick, brief overview of the sort of stuff you've done, but can you just fill in a few gaps about what's brought you into the storytelling world and the pre-viz, pre-production world and the stuff you've done?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a development producer or development executive and a writer. I started out primarily in production, working my way up from being a production coordinator in animation, managing pre-production, so mostly script, voice records, casting, a bit of storyboards, bit of animatics, and then took the opportunity to move up towards development. So I became an associate development producer. And that was when I started taking on projects and creating materials for Marketplace to sort of shepherd new ideas forward out into the world. And I did that for about a year, and then I was made a development producer. And that was amazing. That was kind of the fulfillment of that. And I now work freelance as a development producer and as a writer as well.
Ah, brilliant, brilliant. So that's a great overview of kind of what led you up, all the way up to the point which we're going to talk about, which is your involvement within the two Australian productions which came out last year, which is Meyer the B3 and 100% Wolf. So. Um, so how with them, like you said, there was a progression to get up to that. So where did you come in on those, on those projects? Where were you right at the start when initial ideas were pitched, or?
So for the are you referring to 100% Wolf the movie or the 100% Wolf Legend of the Moonstone TV series?
Ah, see, they're both two different things, aren't they? All right.
Uh,
Well,
I'm
we,
happy to talk about both if you like. I for the film, I played a very small role in helping things along, and I came in when it was already a couple of years into its progression, and I sort of did bits and pieces to help out and got to watch it grow into the fantastic film that it is now. And I guess as a result of the timing, I happened to become the development producer right as the 100% Wolf TV series that is set to follow the events of the feature film came to life. And that one I was on board from pretty much the get-go, which was
ah.
really great and really fun.
All right. Well, let's focus on the series then, because like you said, you were right on the start of that. So the movie itself kind of gave you a bit of a, I guess, a bit of a background in the universe you were trying to create. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's based on the book by a wonderful Australian author Jane Lyons, and the film directed by Alex Staterman is a excellent excellent place to start from because he's already created, well, I guess, developed such a broad and rich universe from Jane's wonderful book. So we stepped into a very exciting narrative world when we started to create the TV series.
Ah, cool. So with the TV series, you were taking the how were you kind of, I guess, pitching the idea then that there was more to tell from that story?
Yeah, well, we left off in Freddie's story. Freddie's the hero of our story. For those who aren't aware, Freddie is a young gentleman, young boy, who on the night of his first werewolf transformation, he is the son of the leader of the pack, and his dad's this pretty amazing force of a werewolf. So everybody has very big expectations for Freddie. But on the night that he first transforms, instead of becoming a big scary werewolf, he turns into an itty bitty poodle. And so he's sort of dealing with that curveball in the feature film. In the film, he's very much sort of finding his feet, learning how to adjust to this big change that's come his way, and kind of learning to accept himself, and to find acceptance within his pack. And I think that was a beautiful story, and a beautiful theme and beautiful tone to kind of work with in the film. And I guess what we wanted to do in the TV series, or at least the way that I viewed it, was to move from that lesson of acceptance and tolerance even further into kind of the celebration of Freddie being a poodle, and to help him find a way to, to kind of have him carve his own space in his world, if that makes sense. It was sort of his journey forward. Now that he knows who he is and he's proud to be who he is, it's time for him to stake his claim on the werewolf world. So we follow him on his journey into the very elite werewolf training school of Howlington Academy.
Oh, Howlington, what a place to go to.
Oh my God, I want to go there so bad. It's so fun. They have secret tunnels. It's great. I'm very into it. I'm very into this school. It's brilliant. The teachers are hilarious. They get up to all kinds of mischief. It's a great series. I think it's actually on ABC iView right now, the first 13 episodes.
Yes, yeah, it is. I know my son's actually been going, 100% Wolf, that's out now. So yes, it is on ABC already. So, so with that that particular overview, then, how did you go about structuring the idea to go, okay, what are we going to put into these episodes? Do you kind of sit down in a brainstorming room with 100 different pieces of paper that you put stickers up on the wall, or what sort of process do you go through to come up with, like, fleshing out a series?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a super collaborative process. We usually wind up with about anywhere between sort of 4 to 7 people in the room. Usually there'll be a writer or a script producer, which in this case is the amazing Finn Edquist, kind of leading the charge on the development of the story for the show. You'll have your producers, such as we had the wonderful Michael Bouchier and Lexia Gatefold and Barbara Stephen as well, who are kind of there guiding and championing that creative development. And then you'll have someone like me, your development producer, who's sort of taking care of all the different moving pieces, thinking about design, about story generation, tracking the logic of the story as it progresses through, and also inputting creatively. And then you might have a couple of other writers. We had many writers come through for brainstorms over both the development period and then into the scripting period. But that first kind of initial crew of people really focuses on breaking down the basic arc of the series. This is more so the case when you have a serialized story arc. Obviously, not every TV series does. Some are episodic. And so you don't really have to worry too much about, an overarching narrative, in which case your character is kind of growing and developing over the length of the series. So much like when you're writing a feature film and you'll plot out kind of the key points in the story, you do the same in the series. You just sort of do it over, in this case, 26 episodes.
Longer
so,
time.
Yeah, it's a longer time frame, and it gives you a chance to kind of really just dig into the world, and milk everything out of it, which is great. And they're very fun rooms to be in. They're very challenging and very exciting, and often full of a lot of laughter as you kind of throw your character into the most trouble you possibly can.
And just see if you think he's going to sink or swim.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you want to do that. You want to be throwing as much at him as possible. And so that was kind of the very early stage of it. And then we brought on our directors, Sergio Delfino and Jackie Trowell, who came in for the scripting part once we sort of started moving towards the series actually, focusing more on the individual episodes of the series.
So the directors are actually coming in after you've actually fleshed out a bit of an idea about where they're going to take it then.
Yeah, absolutely. In this case, we
Yeah.
had Alex Staterman as the creative director on the project on the development stage, and he was there to make sure that we were kind of, building something cinematic, and also obviously on the story side as well, that the directors were going to connect to once they took it over, and moved into late stage development slash pre-production.
Ah, okay. So that gets you a lot of paperwork and plot points happening out. So what was since you're not, what's then your sort of role within that? While everybody else is sort of coming up with, following the paperwork, like the writers are doing the writing, producers are off doing production sort of stuff. What was your role then to kind of collate it into a Bible or a document or?
So a big part of development is preparing the pitch. So I was working quite extensively on that, along with obviously the writer Vin and our producers as well. My role, I guess, is to kind of bring in all of these amazing big ideas and condense them into a tiny little 10-page document that people can take with them to what's called a market, which is where producers and creators and showmakers will go to talk to broadcasters, and buyers, distributors, and sell the shows and films that we will then get to make. So my job is to kind of enable that to happen. So I'll create what's called a pitch Bible, which is that 10-page document. And that kind of sums up the core of the show, the basic story, the characters, premise, most importantly, the genre, the format, the medium, just kind of your really top line stuff. And quite often those books will then include a little bit more about the universe that the story takes place in, the world, the rules of that world, whether there's, whether magic is a thing, or if science is kind of more dominant, or if you have both and it's all mixed up. That kind of stuff. And then at the end of that document, usually you'll get a few short sample episodes, just little one-liners that sort of will tease people. And the purpose is to just kind of give people a big overview of what the show's about.
Ah, so it's actually like getting that pitch Bible together is actually quite, it's not just one person sitting down there actually putting one idea together. It's a big, for especially in like you said in the production of this one, there's quite a lot of people's ideas all filtered down into a little 10-page document.
Yeah, absolutely. And design is such a massive part of that as well. We were very lucky to be working with Shane DeVry, who is a glorious designer based in WA. And he did the work for the film as well. He did the design work for the film and came up with that beautiful language. So we had a lot of his existing stuff, but we needed to then transition it to bring it into the TV landscape, which was a whole other adventure.
Yeah, because it's a different, like, even though you think, oh yeah, it's both on screen, it's very different format, like you said, from length to the way the characters actually interact within the time frame that they've actually got to work with. Was there a lot of like redesign? Like you would have had to come up with more sets and set pieces, like you said, the school was one location they went to. Was there a lot more like added into that then from the film? Like, were you digging?
Oh yeah.
Did you take much, like, I know that there was one book, but are there as many other books to take inspiration from for where these characters go?
There is a second book to follow up, but we kind of really were more following the events of the film into the TV series for the purpose of the timeline that we created. So we didn't take so much inspiration, at least that I'm aware of, from the second book. The first book just gave us so much. So it was already this beautiful universe. So we started off with that. The advantage of doing projects where you have a feature film and then a TV series that follows it is that the design language is already kind of in place. And then it becomes more about accommodating it to the TV landscape and production pipeline, which obviously has to move a lot faster than a feature film. So there has to be an adaptation of design in that sense to suit that speedier production.
Yeah. Well, that was like the process for 100% Wolf, 100% Wolf. Then, like you said, you also were a part of the Meyer the Bee 3 pre-production as well. Now, that is quite a big, all-encompassing IP already. So, was the
Yeah.
process similar then for that second one, or for that third film then?
Actually, you know what? I've worked on two of the Maya films, and the third one was both of them were completely different. From
Oh,
what I understand, each one of them has kind of had a totally different sort of development process, and we've tried new things on each of them, and they've all been great to work on. It's been super super fun. The third film, I found the development process for the third film really smooth and really lovely. Actually, we kind of all got into a room very early on and started talking about the kinds of themes that we wanted to explore, and that really drove the creation of this narrative that you see in the film. And from a couple of, I think we probably had about 3 or 4 early stage meetings. And from that, we started pulling together pitches. Finn Edquist, the writer, did a bunch of pitches. We did another couple of pitches in-house, and we sort of sent them through to the powers that be. And a decision was actually made fairly quickly on a particular story that really shone forward. And it was great because it was the story that we had all worked together on the most, I think. It was a real, everybody sort of had contributed something to it, and everybody felt a sense of, I think, ownership over that particular story. It was a real team effort, and I think that's why it got picked, because quite often when it comes to these things, the more input you have, the better.
yeah. Yeah, was it the same sort of time like you with 100% Wolf? It was quite a like you said, there was like weeks and months that go into actually getting the story together. Like with Maya the Bee, then did it just actually, like you said, it flowed a lot quicker? But what sort of time frame was it that kind of ran past to get the pitch up to a point where they were then the power? Everyone was like, okay, let's go shop this around to see what sort of response we get.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing with Maya, as you mentioned, Kim, it comes from such an established brand, so there's already a very strong audience in place, with the number of films that we had already done that had been out for a few years, not to mention the long running TV series, and of course the books and everything that kind of preceded it. So having that sort of bank of IP available always makes it a little easier to bring a project to market, because there is an understanding that there is an audience for this project already, and it's a lot less convincing. Not that I would know, because I am not a distributor, so I'm sure I'm sure they will probably go, no, Tess, that's not right. Uh, but yeah, it does come in a little stronger to market with all of that backing behind it, the history of that. So I would say, oh gosh, I mean, it's hard to remember exactly how long. The TV series was at least a year, I feel, in early development, before, maybe even a year and a half before we hit sort of early stage pre on it. The Maya film, oh gosh, it feels so much smaller. You probably ask Tracy Lennon, and she'll very much disagree with me. It feels like it kind of came together over a period of only, sort of 6 to 8 months, and then of course the writing
Yeah.
happened
Yeah.
quite quickly and efficiently. Again, I think because the team had so much knowledge going into the project that they really knew who Maya was as a character, and they knew who Willie was as a character, and they knew what they would get up to. And their reactions become almost instinctive, and they sort of start, telling
Yeah.
their own story in a way. So obviously it was the third film for the writer, Finn, and the second for the director, Noel, and the editor, Adam, and the producer, actually. So, and for Tracy, and of course Barbara had done all three. So it was an established team, who had all been working on it for a while, and I think that always keeps things flowing smoothly.
Smoothly. Well, tell me a bit more about Freddie then, because he was the main character. How much thought and how much digging did you guys actually go into to create the Freddie persona?
Oh gosh, the Freddy persona. Well, Freddy is already a pretty strong character in the book. and was definitely really built up in the film. He knows a lot about himself. He's a very competent kid. He's a very playful kid, a very smart kid, and he, digging into the Freddy character, I think with Freddy, it's more about surprising him with the things he doesn't know, and watching him react to that. He's quite a cocky kid. He's a little bit overconfident. So when you put him in sort of an unexpected situation, you get to sort of see a little bit more of his genuine nature. He's a very showy sort of, alpha type personality otherwise. But when you put him into a situation, a bit of hot water, you really get to see his vulnerability come through, and he manages to take a step back and become a pretty good leader through it. He's also pretty decent at listening to the other kids, and that was a nice discovery to have, because quite often those characters tend to sort of bulldoze their way over everybody else, and not really, they lead from the front, whereas Freddy, in true wolf pack behavior, takes everybody else into account and makes his decisions based on what's best for his kind of crew and his team. So I really like that about him.
Yeah.
But I think we probably did the most character development on Batty, because of course in the TV series, Batty, and spoiler alert, you'll see it in episode 2. So ignore the rest of this if you have not caught that yet. But Batty becomes human through a mishap with the Moonstone, and watching her develop from a street stray into a kid in school was a really interesting journey for her.
Yeah, it would be a bit of a mind bender to try and create a character that can actually do that. It's like, oh, you're taking, like you said, stray, then into human world, then into school, and she's got to fit in. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. Happens pretty quick for Batty.
The thing I see with a lot of pre-production is how much fun that actually does go into it. So, it's hard to imagine that you can't have a lot of fun, coming up with ideas about how to stretch something. It's just always kind of going, well, where do you take it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing about development is that you're sort of working in the world of possibility. So until someone says no, it's cool. Like, that's the exciting thing, is that sure, anything could happen. Let's see where it winds up. Let's see what serves the story best. Let's see what creates the most chaos. Coming up with a really fun sequence for Batty when she tries to figure out how to be human for the first time was, I think we spent days on that. Just talking about her face planting into a bowl of cereal, like, she's eating the whole thing, going to shake a hand and then sort of tripping and winding up sniffing a butt as sort of a gesture of hello.
Yep.
Trying to not catch like a ball, and the temptation. Yes.
Just not chase a ball as it's there. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. It's so hard because she is a dog. She just happens to be in a human body, so she sort of has to try and pass, which is a very strange thing for her to have to deal with, a very unnatural thing. And her journey throughout that, and her journey to acceptance is really cool too. So.
Excellent. Well, Tess, thank you so much for sharing, especially the story of those two kind of big things which came out last year from the Australian landscape. Is there anywhere that if anyone wants to chat to you that they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. I was obviously at Flying Butt Productions for many years, and about 2 years ago I had to finish up because I was moving to the US. So I've started my own little company that represents just me writing and developing stories. I do write now as well. I've written a feature film and 13 episodes of TV. So you can find me at my website, which is fluffydinosaur.com. My email is on the contact page. And if you want to see any of the other stuff that I've talked about that might be coming out, or things that I have talked about that might be coming out, my website is tessmeyer.com, and there's a bunch of stuff on there too.
Brilliant. Again, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us. I hope this brings quite a lot of light to the development process and pre-production, especially for anyone who hasn't seen that before. So thanks again for sharing it, Tess.
No worries, Ken. Thanks for having me. Thanks for talking. It's been fun in quarantine to catch up with you.
All right. So thanks everybody for listening along. Until the next episode, we'll all say bye bye.